We have a Temur Delver Mirror on the Legacy table. And on the Standard table, Bant Ramp and Golos Nexus. So a ramp mirror of sorts.
Yeah, and this one is generally going to favor whichever player is just going bigger. And if there's anything we know about Ali Aintrazi, he goes bigger. That's just the way, that's kind of his MO in these situations. A lot of times we'll see him, instead of having his curve stop at, say, 6 or 7, his will stop at 30-ish or something to that effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I remembered if you hadn't seen it earlier today, Ollie's deck is basically 12 ramp spells and then a curve that starts at 5. And we see Goblin Engineer here from Kassis.
And this is strong. This is one of those early Mox Opal starts that you kind of have to be on the lookout for.
Now finds that copy of Ensnaring Bridge, so at the end, the Engineer's activation should be able to go and pick up the Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah, he knows he has this Thopter Sword combo to try and close a game out quickly and actually end it, but he knows that the game will effectively be over as soon as Ensnaring Bridge hits the table.
Yeah, in the main deck of Tomajko, he has 2 Assassin's Trophy, and that's it for ways to answer an Ensnaring Bridge.
Right.
So this, I guess, is the better answer then, right? One of his 2 copies of Fatal Push to take care of the Goblin Engineer to maybe keep the bridge in the graveyard.
Right, and one of the nice things here for Ely is now he has a virtual, let's see here. There are 2 War of Inventions, 1 more Ensnaring Bridge in deck, and another Goblin Engineer. So in some ways, he upped the number of copies of Ensnaring Bridge in his deck by also making just Goblin Engineer and out. Anything that can recur this card is going to be good enough.
Gravecrawler, the follow-up from Tomajko. Can attack in with Stitcher's Supplier.
It looks like we might be seeing a response to this. The big
To
motivation, right? The big motivation here is you don't want to let Tomajko have 2 black creatures on the battlefield if you can avoid it. The big reason is these are enough. The 2 creature threshold is enough to put a Hogak onto the battlefield with those 5 cards we see in Tomajko's graveyard.
Right, Oliver could cast it out of hand, and we'll see there. Okay, through the Astrolabe, Galvanic Blast from Kassis shoots down Stitcher's Supplier. And doesn't mill much of consequence. 2 lands and a Faithless Looting.
Yeah, the Stitcher Supplier has not really put anything that relevant in the graveyard. You know, with 1 more land, that Faithless Looting might do something. But other than that, there's nothing very fast or explosive.
Back to Ely we go. You mentioned 4 ways to find the other Ensnaring Bridge. And Sword of the Meek is the play. A land drop. A pass. So Sword of the Meek plus Thopter Foundry is the combo for Ely's deck. 2 copies of Sword of the Meek. And 4 of Thopter Foundry.
Big hit here.
Yeah, so Satyr Wayfinder dumping a Vengevine into the graveyard.
And now if he has that Hogak that Kassis tried to blank last turn, that's going to be enough to just bring back the Vengevine.
Casual tap 2 creatures, get 12 power.
You know what?
I like it. I would sign up for that.
I don't think I will spend any mana on Hogak. What a fine suggestion.
Stitcher's Supplier also in hand for Oliver. Looks like that's going to be the play. That triggers Vengevine. Says it's the 2nd creature of the turn. Top 3 cards. Another Vengevine.
Ooh.
Yeah, you don't get that one. That's for next turn. That's into the graveyard. And then we'll convoke out Hogak.
Just tapping the summoning sick creatures.
Well,
just in
sense.
case.
Attacks for 6. Ely to 13.
And Ely's facing lethal.
Yeah, and would you look at it? Huh, that's, 12. Oh, only 16 power on the board.
Yeah, don't make
That'll
it weird.
do it. This is through a removal spell.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
Also
a powerful deck.
casting an interaction spell.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah, that fatal put. Otherwise, this turn really wouldn't have been possible through an ensnaring bridge. I mean, it all could have been put on the battlefield, but...
Yeah, and this is, I think, what shows why we're seeing people go to ensnaring bridge. You can't fight fair against what Oliver's doing. So you just need this card that blanks the entire strategy. Thopter Foundry for Ely. So he has Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek in play. Only 1 mana this turn. The question is it going to be enough?
Yeah, this is one more turn.
Right, Hogak. This thing, right, Hogak has trample. If Hogak didn't trample, this feels like it would be manageable.
Right, but as it stands, we're going to see a Thopter get in front of Vengevine and maybe a Thopter getting in front of Gravecrawler.
Right. Yeah, Ely went up to 13. So the combo allows him to pay 1 mana to gain a life and to make a 1/1 flyer as many times as he wants, which is pretty good, but may not be enough.
So the problem is, depending on what Tomajko has in his hand, with that Vengevine hanging out in his graveyard, it's possible that he can still find a way to kill from here.
Tomajko's hand: land, Shriekhorn, Vengevine.
Might you see the classic 4 mana 4/3 with haste.
Looks like we're doing that. Fetches up a 4th land. And yeah, he'll just make a Vengevine. This is a swing for
Several.
20. 20 power. That is typically a lethal number in this game. So Ely goes up to 14. He has 2 blockers. He has to block both Vengevines. It's the only way to stay alive. That is true. So that's what he'll do. And then take 12, go to 2.
Love to be at 2 life.
Huh. He has, the best part is he has his combo, right? There is sort of the Meek Thopter Foundry and a lot of mana.
So he might theoretically be able to live here. So he can go up to 7 life, put the sorted copy in front of Hogak, and then chump block a bunch of other creatures.
Right, another Vengevine. That's right, it makes 5 Thopters. Ely goes up to 7. One of them is a 2/3, the rest are 1/1s. So it seems pretty easy he chump blocks all the Vengevines.
Right.
They don't trample, it's the best way to prevent damage. The 2/3 goes in front of Hogak, so 5 tramples over. So you'll be at 2.
Nope.
And then there's a pair of 1/1s. Yeah, there's no way to prevent it.
Wow.
Oliver Tomajko powers through the combo. Oof. Now, with 1 more land, if Ely had a land drop for the turn, he'd have 1 more Thopter and could stay alive.
Right, he could have survived. Also, a copy of Urza would have won the game right there. It would have been infinite life and infinite Thopters, and casting his whole library and so on. But as it stands, it just wasn't going to get it done. Yeah,
and Oliver showing the power of the deck that it really feels like unless Ely has an infinite combo or an ensnaring bridge, it's just not going to be enough.
Exactly. So the big thing that we should be focusing on here, and you brought it up before, is you cannot fight fair against this Hogak deck. Ensnaring bridge is a sort of prison piece that just invalidates what the Hogak deck is doing. And the other thing, you said it yourself, it's literally an infinite combo, and that is what it takes to beat this deck. We saw Tomajko attacking for 24 there.
Right. Now, game 1 feels like that should be Ely's best game because Oliver doesn't have as many answers to a bridge yet.
Right.
And now that we're in the sideboarded games, Oliver gets more to work with. We see normally Force of Vigor in all these decks, and it is indeed a 4 of in Oliver's sideboard.
Yep, he has 4 of those and an Assassin's Trophy that are assuredly going to be coming in out of the sideboard, so we can expect to see more interaction on Tomajko's side. And most of what Ely is doing is kind of in the main deck. That's not to say he has nothing. We see a Grafdigger's Cage coming in out of the sideboard, absolutely. But he has so many of these things main deck, and this is frequently a favorable enough matchup for Urza because of the work that Ensnaring Bridge puts in, that you'll see it kind of be a little bit lighter on Graveyard Hate.
So some good news on Ely's side. The ramp mirror, his teammate Ali Aintrazi with Golos Nexus goes a bit bigger and takes game 1 from Dylan Donegan. So currently things are even at 1 apiece for both teams.
Oh, I mean, it's a close match, and these are probably 6 of the strongest players in the room.
Right, so yeah, the Force of Vigors coming in, Assassin's Trophy, a lot of extra ways for Oliver to knock these artifacts off the board. On Ely's side, you know, he has a Grafdigger's Cage, which should be good here, but there's not too much I actually like out of his sideboard.
Yeah, so there's a Spellskite, a Damping Sphere, a Pithing Needle, a Grafdigger's Cage, some Assassin's Trophy, and then Tezzeret, Nature's Claim, Pyroclasm, Thoughtseize, and Ceremonious Rejection, and those are a lot of hate pieces for other decks. You might see something like Spellskite come in if he thinks that his best shot is to try and build a prison.
Yeah, and what I think's interesting here is that this really shows that Ely was confident in his game one. No one's showing up to this tournament without a way to beat Hogak.
Right, it is the deck.
It is the deck. So if Ely is registering his sideboard like this, what it tells me is he's playing, you know, all his cards that are good against Hogak were in the main.
Right, we see a copy of Nile Spellbomb, 2 copies of Grafdigger's Cage. He has a bunch of ways to find these between Goblin Engineer and War of Invention. His infinite combo is generally going to give him a bunch of points in the matchup. It covers a bunch of ground, but you know, we kind of saw the power of the Hogak deck game one where it can just say, all right, you know what, have your combo. Also, I'm going to attack you and just close the game before you get the time to make that matter.
So you've been talking this weekend about SCG Con Winter. If you're looking for ways to qualify it, well, of course, the top 8 of all of our opens qualify it. But if that's not accessible to you, you can also qualify via the SCG Invitational Qualifiers. These are local tournaments held around the country with $1,000 to the top 8 and qualifications to the top 2 finishers in each of these tournaments. They add points to the SCG Tour, and you can also win exclusive playmats and tokens for playing in them. You can find a location near you at starcitygames.com/IQ. And back to the match between the two. You mentioned that Ely has cards in his sideboard really targeting other decks. And so I want to look at the card Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas. You see that sometimes. You know, what strategies is that for? I'm assuming it's too slow against something like Hogak.
Right, that's generally going to be against the decks where you expect to play several turns. And I know that sounds kind of obvious, right? You want to play a bunch of turns. But Planeswalkers in general are going to be cards that favor getting to activate them multiple times. No one is going to play a card that is blue, black, to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put an artifact in your hand. You're playing it because you plan to have this one card kind of take over a game by itself. So these are going to be your matchups like Azorius Control, maybe some of the black-green fair decks of the format. Not Hogak, that's its own flavor of Overgrown Tomb, but these are your Inquisition of Kozilek, Raging Ravine, Renin 6 decks.
Remember with Lantern Control, and that was a deck, Tezzeret came out of the sideboard in matchups where it was very hard to actually control your opponent. So something like Tron, where, you know, you could get a bridge, you could get a welding jar, it didn't matter. You know, maybe something like here, I suppose, are there matchups where Sword of the Meek and Thopter Foundry just aren't good enough?
Right, so these are going to be for the matchups where you either need to take a more aggressive role and be better at turning the corner, or when, like you mentioned, you're just not going to be as effective at controlling your opponent. And not in the way where you have to completely circumvent what they're doing by sort of building a prison, but in the way where you either can't effectively build a prison, or they're going to be good at picking apart the synergies of your deck to the point where, yeah, Thopter Sword is probably good enough, but Sword of the Meek by itself is not good enough.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the interesting things about this Urza deck as compared to, I think, just the straight Whir decks before it or Lantern before that, is that rather than trying to build a prison and control the game forever, they are trying to control the game for a few turns and then close out with Urza Lord High Artificer.
Right, there's a point where playing these Ensnaring Bridge decks is not going to work in the way that Lantern Control used to, where you plan to control the rest of the turns of the game. Now, you really just almost want to use them as a sort of tempo play, where you go, yeah, I'll bet you can break out of this, but it's going to take you 4 or 5 turns, and that's almost like 4 or 5 free time walks or something to that effect. Just those 4 or 5 extra turns are probably going to be good enough for you to get one of your infinite combos online or get so far ahead while kind of in your glass house that they can't catch up.
So for Ely Kassis, a former invitational champion here on the SCG Tour, has 14 open top 8s, including a win, and then that one invitational win that he had as well with 4 back in the 4-color energy standard.
Yeah, that was actually a great event. That was, if memory serves correctly, Austin Collins' first Invitational top 4, where he did it 3 times in a row.
I believe that is right.
Yeah, great event. Very, very skill-intensive top 8. We saw a lot of great players. I believe Sam Black and Eli Kassis were in the finals in an energy mirror. And it was just Scarab God versus classic Teamer energy.
One of the things when I watch with Eli's play style is it tends to be more proactive than reactive, but he really tends to favor powerful cards. So, for a while in Modern, the Bant Nightfall deck was Eli's deck of choice. But the Retreat to Coral Helm Knight of the Reliquary deck. We saw some things like 4-color Energy, and I think now 4-color Urza. These are kind of these toolbox decks. It's not sitting back and countering your opponent's spells. He definitely likes to play toward the board, likes to make his own threats. But even so, he's doing that with good individual cards in multicolored decks.
Right. Very few of his cards are reactive. Most of his interactive pieces are going to be things that shut off what the opponent can do. And Snaring Bridge is actually a great example of this, where rather than actually wait for the opponent to play something that can attack and then try to fatal push it or something to that effect, he's actually just saying, all right, well, I don't really care what happens. I'm willing to invest a card into saying you can't attack ever.
Right.
Speaking of toolboxy decks, that Invitational he actually won in Modern was playing Gift Storm at the time. And Gifts Ungiven is exactly his thing.
Yeah, and again, I think it's powerful decks, but it's proactive decks.
Exactly. And even then the answers in those decks are answers to answers. Where it's saying, I just want to cast a big grape shot, and I might use an Echoing Truth to make sure I can use that grape shot, but it's not actually trying to prolong the game very much most of the time.
Standard, Dylan Donegan evens things up in the ramp mirror with Aintrazi. Meanwhile, on the Lexi table, we have a Delver mirror stretching out still in game 1.
Love Wasteland.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm glad to see one going that long. I would say Noah Walker in a straight Delver mirror in Legacy has got to be one of the scariest pairings you can come up against.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's someone where if you play against him on Magic Online, that's Noah1 is his username, you just know.
Yeah.
You know what's about to happen, and you also know it doesn't matter that you know what's about to happen. He's just so good at the deck.
So we're here for game 2. Eli is down a game. He is on a 5-card hand here, which never something you want to see, though sometimes with Ensnaring Bridge hands that actually can help out a deck like this.
Right, and there's even a point where Modern's kind of at a place where, because things are so synergy-based, it's not always doesn't matter. It's not about the card advantage you have. It's about the specific cards and tools you have available to you. So it's likely that Eli kind of used his mulligan. He mulliganed a little more liberally in order to find specific tools.
Yeah, I mean, take a deck like Oliver's. The Hogak deck is going to mulligan to find a good hand all the time.
Yeah, you'll frequently see this deck win on a 4-card opening hand. Imagine land, Stitcher, Supplier. Or land, Stitcher, Supplier, Stitcher, Supplier, Hogak is a turn 2 Hogak on 4 cards.
Yeah. Well, that's nice.
Use that move a few times.
Yeah, this Hogak card's really...
Yeah,
it's a struggle to make it happen, but...
It ain't much, but it's honest work. I'm kidding. It's not honest work.
I was just like, yeah, look. Here's a Traducator Wayfinder. He didn't. Does he have a Hogak in hand?
He chose not to put a land in his hand so he can leave this Faithless Looting in graveyard.
Ooh. So turn 2, we're gonna make Hogak and get back Vengevine. Woo!
Move to combat.
I mean, okay. The Faithless Looting thing was really nice, and Oliver Tomajko's a master, and also, hey, 12 power.
Excuse you, there's 15 power in play?
12, yeah. Okay, I suppose this turn was all of it. all of it. He can't, all of it was this turn. Yeah, 15 power in turn 2. What are you doing? You made a 0-4. Okay. That's not as much.
What we in the biz call a tie game.
It's just like... I say this a lot in Modern. It's like, what did you do on turn 2? And then they'll be like, they cast 15 power. I'd be like, well, what did I do? It's like, Farseek. I'd be like,
This is why
I don't know what I'm doing here.
This is why we're in the booth.
Yeah.
You just want to play Farseek. I just want to play Blighted Agent.
Yeah, like,
Oliver Tomajko wants to play 15
yeah,
power.
Like, 50 power play. What'd you do? I put a Stomping Ground into play tapped.
That's
yeah, it was a
neat.
nice turn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now I have 3 lands.
Played it before your Cinderglade, since that might come into play on tap for free.
Yeah.
The classic. So something to note about Kassis' turn is he missed his land drop on turn 3.
All right. Feels like...
Well...
Does he have the bridge? No, it is Urza.
That's a good amount of toughness between Urza, Spellskite, and this Golem.
Ely, however, we don't have it up here, but we'll see he is at 3. That Hogak fellow, he tramples.
Stomp, stomp, stomp.
I don't know that Pyrite Spellbomb is going to be enough.
So it's a 5/5 construct. You can put Spellskite in front of Vengevine. The construct and Hogak or the construct and Urza in front of Hogak.
You put Urza in front of the Seder Wayfinder. You got to send a message. No, there's just still no way. It's not enough.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You need to put 9 power in front toughness. No, there's no way to do it. Yeah. I don't see it. Nice. You know, this Hogak deck is still legal. And if it is, and you're planning on playing a tournament,
honestly,
I would really recommend you try playing it.
I suspect this tournament will be legal, or this deck will be legal for multiple days after this. We're talking like 10 days.
And 2-0. Oliver Tomajko picks up the win. Convincing. Some updates here. Hunter Nance takes game 1, so Ely's going to have to rely on his teammates. Both of them do have a game win. He actually gets that game 1 over Noah Walker in the Delver Mirror.
And, you know, Hunter Nance is no slouch in this. He's played in 2 Players' Championships, if memory serves. A lot of that on the back of Legacy results. We played a lot of Grixis Delver during Deathrite Shaman era.
Yeah. So we're going to move over to the Ramp Mirror between Dylan Donegan and Ali Aintrazi. Golos Nexus is going to have to come through for Ali if they want to keep the match alive.
That's a lot of dice on Dylan's side of the table.
Nissa Who Shakes the World. Hydroid Krasis. Land. This is looking like a tall order for Ali to stay in this game. Life totals are right here, though, at 17. And it's going to be Circuitous Route and Aether Gust for Donegan.
Oh, that may be what happened last turn as well. We see another one hanging out in the graveyard. 3, 6, 9, 10, 15 coming across next turn.
Well, it's not lethal yet.
That is technically true.
And so Ali puts it on the bottom because he certainly can't cast it next turn. Looking at Ollie's deck, does he have... I believe he plays a sweeper, right? No, his sweeper, if you're wondering, his sweeper is Massacre Girl. Oof. If you didn't keep that watch earlier, and he doesn't have it. The Aether Gust's behind the pressure from Dylan. I think we saw this with Kevin Jones again, that Llanowar Elves into an early Nissa Who Shakes the World can still just be too fast.
It's just so brutal.
Ollie's deck. And that's going to be it. So Noah Walker, Oliver Tomajko, and Dylan Donegan pick up the win. They improve to 7-2. They lock themselves for day 2. And for Kassis, Aintrazi, and Nance, now they have to wait.
Nissa Who Shakes the World is just such a messed up planeswalker. Think about this card for a second. All right, would you play this? 5 mana, 3/3 with haste.